Alright, so let's get started drawing Michelangelo, or Mikey, from the new Ninja Turtles movie. So right now I'm drawing very lightly, and I'm just trying to figure out where his body is, where his head is, where his legs are and arms are. I'm just trying to slowly sketch this out. I'm not drawing too dark, because I'm just trying to make myself a guide on how I'm going to start drawing in all the details. I think that's where a lot of people mess up. They start focusing on one area and start drawing in all the details and work really hard in one small area, and then when they get done with that area, they start drawing the rest of the picture, and all the proportions turn out to be wrong. So I like starting to figure out just a general idea of what this picture is going to look like before I start filling in all the details. So now that I've got just a very general understanding of his body, I'm starting to put in a little bit of detail. As you can see, still not drawing too dark. Don't want to put in those dark lines until you're sure of where you want them. So putting in a little bit more detail here, and then you'll notice I move on. Starting to try to figure out where the body's at now and his front shell. You'll notice I'm pretty much sticking with those guidelines that I made earlier. You'll notice some of the time that I don't necessarily follow exactly where the guidelines are. They're just guidelines. They're to give you a general idea of where you think something should go. But as you start to draw and you start to fill in more and more detail, sometimes you'll notice that, hey, that's a little bit off, right? It's a little bit off, and hey, this needs to be moved a little bit over this way, or this piece needs to be a little bit longer, and that's fine. That's great. It's just, the guidelines are there just to sort of help you have a general idea of where things might need to be. Now I'm working on his arm, trying to figure out exactly how this elbow is supposed to be in his hands, and trying to figure that out. And Ninja Turtles only have 3 fingers, so it's a little bit awkward to try to figure out how their fingers should look. Alright, now we're putting in a guideline for his back shell. You notice I'm still keeping everything light. I'm drawing the belt in, I'm drawing over what I've already drawn. So I've got lines that are overlapping, and that's okay, because I'm keeping everything light, and at the end is when I'll start to just darken all these lines when I'm sure that's where I want them to be. Here we're working on the nunchucks that are in his belt, tucked away. His legs were a little tricky here with the stance that I've got. It's a little bit of foreshortening. It's got one leg in front of the other, so that back leg's got to be a lot smaller than the front leg. It's a little tricky to figure out. I think we tackle it just fine here. So as you could see there, I didn't follow, like I was mentioning earlier, I didn't follow exactly where my guidelines were. That leg's actually turned out to be a little bit longer than what I planned for it to be. That's okay. Just draw it in just a little bit darker and move on. If we need to make corrections as we go further on, that's fine. We'll make more corrections. point of keeping everything light is so that if I do make a mistake, we need to fix it later. It's harder to erase dark lines. So we keep everything light so that if we need to erase them, they're very easy to erase. You don't have any blemishes on the paper. And we just move on, and nobody knows we made a mistake. So now I'm finally making my third pass on the drawing. So notice, like, now I'm starting to feel a little more confident. This is where things go. So now I'm starting to make my lines a little more pronounced, a little bit darker. Started with a very rough outline. Started to figure things out a little bit more. The lines a little bit more darker. Added just a little bit more detail. And now I'm going over it from top to bottom again, a third time, with darker lines and even more detail. And again, I think the mistake a lot of people make when going to draw something is as I mentioned earlier, they focus on one area and they focus on detail in their first pass. Sometimes people draw and they only do one pass on their drawing, done with it. I like to sort of figure things out in steps, step 1, 2, and 3, and just add detail each step and go a little bit darker and a little bit darker. Find out the overall shapes that make up your picture, make up your drawing. Your first pass can literally just be shapes. And as you go in, you start to refine those shapes and everything starts to take place. Adding just a little bit more detail back there to the nunchucks. Add some of the sections of his shell, his back, fill that in. Now we start to finish up the legs. The legs were the hardest part again. See, I'm even trying to figure out, drawing a little circle here. This is where his knee would be. Try to work around it a little bit better. Yeah. His back leg, see, I begin to adjust it again. I noticed that even though I did not follow my guidelines the first time, I adjusted again on the third pass. Still didn't think I did it well enough, so I had to move it down a little bit, make it a little bit longer. I think it turned out just fine. So finishing up the legs here.
Hey guys, this is Max. Now I'm coloring Michelangelo from Ninja Turtles. First, I'm coloring all of his bands orange. So I'm starting with his head, then the arms, and then the legs. And so now I'm coloring his skin green until I have all the spots covered. So now I'm trying my best to stay in the lines. And now I forgot to do this part, so I'm doing this orange. Okay, so now I'm doing his hands and his arms. Okay, now I'm just finishing up the green part. After this arm, I just have the head and the neck. Okay, now I'm just finishing up the head, and then I'll work my way to the other sections of his body. Alright, so now I'm coloring in the back of his shell, like the inside of his shell. Now I'm doing the front of the shell. I think I made his shell too bright, so now I'm making it a little darker. And now I'm coloring in his belt, but not the buckle. Alright, now I'm doing the buckle. And I'm darkening in the belt a little more. Hang on, let's see if we can get a different color to darken it up. There we go. Now I am coloring in his nunchucks. I am coloring in his nunchucks brown and the chain gray. Now I am coloring the shell like a darkish brownish. My dad is darkening up all the spots that are super bright. He's trying to color in all the shadow. Now he's doing all the shadow on the legs. And then the feet. And now he's blending the shadows together. And there you have it. That's how to draw Michelangelo from the new Ninja Turtles movie.